Good morning, age-friendly champions. Today is August 19th, 2021. I'm your host, Lenny Orlov. I use he, him, his pronouns. Today on the show, we'll meet the Department of Neighborhoods Director, Sam Zimbabwe. We'll get a very brief update on local COVID-19 guidelines and hear from our partner, the Seattle Public Library. And be sure to stay till the very end for a live Q&A session. And if you're joining us on the phone, we'll talk more about what that's gonna look like for you. If you find this program of value and you're watching us on our YouTube channel right now, please consider subscribing and enabling notifications. And if you haven't discovered our YouTube channel yet, it's at youtube.com/Aging King County. And we'll put that link in a live Q&A if you are joining us online right now. First, before we get started though, I would like you to join us in acknowledging the indigenous land the city of Seattle is on. At Seattle Human Services, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. We want to invite you to visit the Duwamish tribe's website, which is at duwamishtribe.org. There you can learn more about the Duwamish, people of the inside, who are still here, and find out how you can get involved, and we thank you very much. So welcome to Age-Friendly Seattle's currently virtual Civic Coffee Hour. Before I introduce the crew and talk about resources that we have available, I did want to talk very briefly about what is age-friendly, and you'll hear more about that in today's presentation because transportation is a big part of cities becoming more livable, which is what age-friendly is all about. It's this worldwide movement to make municipalities like cities, states, countries, the world, a better place to grow up and grow old. And there are 8 domains of livability, transportation being a very important one, but there's also housing, there's also things like communications and social and civic participation and access to healthcare, etc. And you can find out more about that if you visit our webpage on City of Seattle's website, which is seattle.gov/age-friendly. And the way you can support us is by being an age-friendly champion. Attend events like this one, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And what we concentrate on specifically in 2021 is connection, inclusion, and access as part of our action plan, which you can also see on our website. And we realize that digital equity is important, and not everybody has access to high-speed internet yet. Hopefully that's coming down the line to where that's going to be part of the infrastructure. Remains to be seen. But currently we are offering a dial-in option to where you can call in and participate. And our presenters are aware of the fact that some folks are joining without video, and so your experience should still be great. We also are very committed to language access. You'll notice there are languages listed here at the bottom of your screen if you're watching this online. Basically, you can click the gear and enable the captions in the language that we are able to include. And currently, we have English and, in addition, Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So these are available for you to choose one at a time. And maybe down the line we'll have human interpreters joining us virtually. So far we haven't got to that point with the tech. I would like to introduce to you the moderators for today's event. They're Gira Hammam, Meg Wolf, Andrea Yip, Justin England, and I'm your host again, Lenny Orlov. Also joining us in the virtual studio, but not pictured, is Dawn Schellenberg, Deputy Director of Communications and Public Engagement at SDOT. Dawn, thank you so much for being here. I would like to move us along, but before I do that, I want to say, social participation, as I mentioned, is one of the 8 domains of livability that helps make cities age-friendly. And that's why it's important that there is a Q&A, that there is a feedback loop for these presentations. However, there may be questions that you have that go beyond what we covered today. And in that case, we encourage you to contact Community Living Connections, which is a network of organizations in your local communities here in Seattle and King County that provide services and resources such as food and meals, and spoiler alert, we will have a member organization on our next show, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But to reach Community Living Connections, you are welcome to visit them on the web at communitylivingconnections.org, or you can call 1-844-348-5464 and find out what sort of opportunities they have. Yeah, here we go. So CMAR is one of the organizations in the Community Living Connections network, and you may have noticed that this program is not called Coffee Hour. It's called Close to Home: Stories of Health Tech and Resilience. It's streamed live on the first Thursday of the month, unlike the Coffee Hour, which is the third Thursday. The Coffee Hour has been around for, I don't know, a dozen years, and it's always been an in-person event and is currently virtual. Moving down the line, we'll probably come up with some kind of a hybrid solution that will include both. Like on Close to Home, it's usually community leaders, and you'll see on your slide, Jorge Madrazo is Vice President of Community Relations at CMAR, and will be joining us so we can kick off our celebrations of Hispanic Latino Heritage Month and talk about what CMAR does at their community health clinics. And the Coffee Hour is more of a connection with government decision makers like Zimbabwe, who will be meeting here momentarily. So in addition to that, and of course you join the exact same way you did today. There's just the one link to remember for any virtual and hybrid events that we do, which is bit.ly/HFriendlyLive. All words are capitalized, and you can also call in at the numbers 206-207-1700, and there is a code 146-123-2689. And obviously you don't have to memorize or write this down. If you go to that website and you want to share with a friend, all those instructions are listed. Both of these programs are supported by our partners at the Seattle Public Library. The Seattle Public Library has joined us in 2020 and actually at the physical library. We did have one event. It was really great. A lot of folks showed up to learn about the census, and then we had to move into this virtual space. It remains to be seen what 2021 or 2022 brings, excuse me. But hopefully we could do some kind of a combination of a library presentation and a virtual component, and possibly at a community center where people would gather and watch a broadcast and also could participate live. Stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, on the next slide, you will see Nancy.Slote, Older Adults Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. Nancy, we really appreciate the library's partnership and yours in particular. Thank you for being a special agent for age friendliness for us at the library. What is it? What is the library doing? How is it? I know you're opening a lot of spaces, probably not the meeting spaces for events yet, but yeah, I'll let you talk about that. The stage is yours.
Great. Hi, everyone. Good morning. And thank you, Lenny. And thank you very much to Age Friendly and Seattle Aging and Disability Services for letting us partner with you. So as the Older Adults Program Manager, I create programs and services to make the library more age-friendly and accessible to everyone in the community. I have the opportunity on the coffee hours on the Close to Home to give you a short update on what's new at the library and how our reopening is going. So let me get started. So could I have the next slide? So we are so happy that we do have 23 of our 27 branches open. The book returns, you can return it 24/7. Some of our smallest branches, the 4 really small ones like New Holly and the Madrona branch and Wallingford and Montlake, we're still working on sort of looking at the physical space of those buildings to try to make it safe for both our patrons and for the staff. So many of the branches of the 23 are open 5 days a week. Others are 3 days a week, and others are 2 days a week. But the other thing is that we have always asked people and required people to wear masks in the building. And of course, we're following very closely with public health now. So could I have the next slide? So a couple of weeks ago, I showed you that the Fremont Library just opened, and it's open 2 days a week. And I just love this library. I love our Carnegie libraries. We have 6 of them in the library system. And Andrew Carnegie, who was an late 19th century, early 20th century philanthropist and industrialist, he financed hundreds and hundreds of libraries throughout the United States and actually around the country. And I love it that the Seattle Public Library kept 6 of those buildings. They have they're on the National Register of Historic Places. They're landmarked. And I worked in one of the Carnegie libraries in the West Seattle branch. And it's just, there's something about touching the original shelving, that was from the early 20th century, right? Like hundreds and thousands of people have been looking at the shelves in those libraries. So anyway, you can tell that I really do love libraries. So could I have the next slide? So you can do almost anything in the library that you could do pre-pandemic. Obviously, my favorite thing is browsing, but lots of computers available and tech help from the staff. Some of the libraries have laptops that you can check out for use in the library. There's a number of computers that have accessibility software on them, like magnification and JAWS. You can charge your devices. You can sit in the library and use your own device and get our Wi-Fi. Of course, you can get your questions answered by library staff and questions about your account. A lot of people are sitting in the libraries and just reading magazines and newspapers and just sort of being in the nice space of a library. So as Lenny mentioned, our meeting rooms are not yet open. We're working on trying to figure that out. And those are the rooms in the branches that community groups and members can use for free. And so we're trying to figure out how to make that safe for everyone. And we also don't have any plans for any in-person library programs for the rest of the year. So could I have the next slide? We do have more limited hours and days open for all of the branches. And we are working, we received new money from the city to hire back and fill a lot of positions that were eliminated at the beginning of the year. And we're bringing those people on. And in September and October, our plan is to return to all the pre-pandemic levels, including the evening hours at branches. So be sure to check our webpage, check your neighborhood branch that you use. You can either do that by getting onto the library's website at www.spl.org, or you could call our quick information. That's our telephone reference. And they can quickly give you that information. And that phone number is 206-386-4636. That's staff that answer questions at quick information. They have an incredible collective knowledge. And I just don't think there's anything that can stump the library staff collectively, which is kind of the really cool thing about libraries. And, if you get stumped, we have kind of an electronic reference system and we can get input from all kinds of librarians. So it's great. Could I have the next slide? So I have talked about this a couple of times this summer, but my favorite program at the library is Adult Book Bingo. You can see this card here on the screen. It's got 25 boxes of different kinds of genres of books to read, like Made You Laugh, or Takes Place in an Olympic City, or Activism or Social Justice, or Recommended by a Librarian or a Bookseller. And so you read books, that fit those categories, write the title and the author. And once you get a bingo, you can submit your card and be put into a drawing for prizes. And if you go for the whole blackout, we have a great single prize, which are tickets to the Arts and Lecture series. Arts and Lecture organization is a partner with us on Book Bingo. The card also comes in Spanish, and you can ask at any branch for it or download it from and print it from the library. So could I have the next slide? And I wouldn't be a librarian if I didn't recommend a book. So I'm reading Larry McMurtry, Lonesome Dove. I mean, it's a Western. I never thought I'd be reading a Western that was 900 pages long in paperback. I can barely keep it open while I read it. And it's an old book from 1985. And I've learned a whole lot about life in the late 19th century on the border with Mexico. So I highly recommend it. And it fits a couple of Book Bingo categories: recommended by library staff, recommended by a friend, or a book from a series. So get going on Larry McMurtry. Could I have the next slide? I always also want to just mention a couple of upcoming programs. We offer classes, workshops, programs on, explaining sort of all the different parts of Medicare. We call it Medicare Made Clear. We offer it throughout the year, but we especially focus now in the summer and early fall because we have an open enrollment period coming up where people can change the kind of coverage that they have. And so we have a class coming up September 25th. That's going to be actually in Mandarin. And then we have one on September 28th that's going to be in English. So you do need to register for those classes. And you can register through the library's calendar, events calendar. And that address, www address is spl.org/calendar. You just search for the date and you'll be able to register. And of course, all library programs are free. Could I have the next slide? And then to finish, I just want to invite you to visit the pages on the library website that talk about all of our services and programs and have lists of resources for older adults. We call our program Next Chapter. And you can get to that at spl.org/next chapter. And then my final slide, I just want to invite you, if you have any questions or want to talk about library programs for older adults or have some ideas, please, I would love to talk with you. And you can get a hold of me at my email at Nancy.Slote@spl.org. So thanks for these few minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or at the end of the program. So back to you, Lenny.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Really appreciate the update, and again, I appreciate your partnership. I think I'm not the only one appreciating that, though. I got a nice comment here on Facebook, actually. I'm going to read it off. So excited. This is a comment from Shauna. That says, so excited for the library reopening, and I want to thank you for your creative checkout during COVID. We look forward to the sensory story times restarting. So a nice note like that coming in.
That's fabulous. Yeah.
And let me see if there are any questions. It doesn't look like there's any questions there on Facebook, and we did have some questions come through. It looks like, oh, there's a comment. Thank you for this presentation, Nancy. I look forward to visiting the Central Library when I visit Washington in September. So we have somebody watching from outside of the state of Washington. So here we go. That's the advantage of virtual, I guess. So thank you for all your work. Do we have any other comments or questions for the library? I'm getting a signal that we do not. All right, very good. Thank you, Nancy. However, don't go anywhere because more questions may come in as people think of them, maybe as related to transportation. We'll see. So thank you again for being here, and we'll see you in a moment. Just yesterday, out of the governor's office, there is a new masking mandate that came out, and I'd like to share with you what that actually said. And if you're watching this online, you'll see there's a red box around what the website actually says. And the website I'm referring to is King County Public Health, of course, who we had on the program earlier. We're going to link it up for you if you're watching us on YouTube. The way you get to that website is you just go to kingcounty.gov, and the first link you'll see is COVID-19, and you click that and you'll land right on this page. But we'll post a more direct link in the chat if you're joining us live. By the way, even before I get into the new mandate, if you have any questions about COVID-19 and what that means in your community, or if you're looking for a vaccination site, or if any questions about vaccines or anything like that, you can call 1-800-525-0127. That's the state Department of Health, and they can answer any questions about the pandemic. You can also, if you have a smartphone or any cell phone, you can text your zip code to this short number 438829, and you'll automatically get between 3 and 5 different locations where vaccines are actually in stock if you're looking for one in a hurry. And part of the new mandate is that the vaccines are now required, or will be required, starting on October 18th. We as City of Seattle employees, county and state employees as well, will have to, with some exceptions, will have to show proof of vaccination, and as well as K through 12 educators, school staff, coaches, bus drivers, and even volunteers working in school facilities. And that doesn't just apply to K through 12; it's early learning and higher ed. So this new these new words from the governor, I mean, in some ways it's intergenerational, right? We're relying on everyone to help us, as the Delta variant is certainly surging all over the state, the country, and the world. And as far as eligibility, currently only people over 12 are eligible, and 12 to and it's Pfizer that's available. 5 to 11 years old is projected for this fall, and then 6 months to 4 years in 2022, but hopefully sooner. Now, the new masking requirement, the change is that everyone who is over 5 years of age now has to wear face coverings in most public indoor settings, regardless of vaccination status. And that's, places like grocery stores, malls, gyms, community centers, and places like that. And masks are strongly recommended in crowded outdoor settings like sporting events. You can see I'm a big Sounders fan, so that, certainly is something that is being strongly recommended, and concerts and other places where physical distancing is not possible. So these are the updates that we have. Please contact the state or the county health officials if you have any additional questions. So I'd like to welcome back Sam Zimbabwe, who has been the director of the Department of Transportation here at the City of Seattle since 2019. I won't say anything more about him except for, Sam, really appreciate you coming back a year after you were on the program before. Unfortunately, we're still virtual, but maybe next year when you come back, we'll actually get to shake hands and things like that. So with that, please take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lenny, and thanks for having me back. It's really great to be with folks again, talking about what we're doing at SDOT to build an age-friendly transportation system. So you can go on to the next slide. As Lenny said, I'm Sam Zimbabwe. I'm the director of the Seattle Department of Transportation, and we run the streets in the city of Seattle. And we work very closely with King County Metro and Sound Transit. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward on the transit system, and with Washington State Department of Transportation on the broader highway system as well. Transportation is really interconnected, and we work very closely in partnership across the region here. I'm going to talk a little bit about our transportation vision in Seattle and what it means to make an age-friendly transportation system, how we're making it easier to move around without a car, how we're working to keep everybody safe and healthy, support economic recovery, and then some of what we're starting to do in terms of planning for the future, and then really want to get into some questions and answers too. You can go on to the next slide. I always start our presentations with our vision, mission, and core values because it's really important for us at SDOT to ground what we do each and every day in our bigger picture of vision and mission. So our vision of Seattle as a thriving, equitable community powered by dependable transportation, and our mission to deliver a transportation system that provides safe and affordable access to places and opportunities. And age-friendly transportation is really critical in that as we think about equity, as we think about people of all ages and abilities to get around where they need to go. Our 6 core values of equity, safety, mobility, sustainability, livability, and excellence really guide our work. And there's a little bit more about that about what we mean by each of those values on our website as well. You can go forward one more slide. So as a lot of what I'm going to talk about in this presentation, tons of hardworking staff all across SDOT working each and every day to make an age-friendly transportation system. And as we work, we really think that when we design for the oldest and youngest among us, as well as people of all ages and abilities, we design a city that works better for everybody. And we've done that through work on an age-friendly street design toolkit that really helps us guide how we build and manage and maintain our system to make sure that it works for people of all ages. And when we think about how we build for people of all ages, we think about things like, would you send your grandparents or children to walk or bike to the nearest park or across that intersection or along that street? And so I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing to make our streets more accessible for people of all ages here next. So you can go forward one more slide. So we do a lot to make walking more accessible and comfortable, and we do that in a couple of different ways. And that's everything from replacing our street signs with larger lettering on streets. A few years ago, we replaced street signs at over 8,000 intersections with street names that were just a little bit larger, about 50% larger, so that it's easier to see and read those. We're working to install pilot some age-friendly benches in and around downtown with armrests around Pioneer Square. Every year, we build hundreds of new curb ramps that are accessible for people with disabilities, but also make it easier for everybody to get around pushing a stroller or cart or something like that. We install over 1,000 new curb ramps or retrofit new curb ramps every year, and you can request those through our Americans with Disabilities Act ADA program. There's information here on the screen. It's DOT_ADA program at seattle.gov, or you can call 206-615-1974 and let us know where you have an intersection that may be difficult to navigate. And we maintain a customer service request list of ramps to build, and then we work through that list to make the city more accessible. This year, we're likely to have sort of a record year in terms of building new retrofitted curb ramps as we continue to work across the city to make it more accessible. You can go to the next slide. We're also working on making it easier to find your way around Seattle. If you've been around downtown recently, you may have seen some new signposts out there that help people get oriented to where you're going. There's a picture on the screen here of somebody looking at one of these new signs that we call Seamless Seattle, and it has some maps that help you orient where you may be going. It also shows some little details about accessible walking routes, what the flattest way to get from A to B might be, entrances, some ways that you may not even know about how to cut through some buildings with open publicly accessible elevators that help you navigate the grade, some publicly available restrooms and benches. We really want to make sure we're providing this information out in places so that people can navigate and get around the city. These are some new signs that we put started out in and around downtown, but we'll look to continue to expand this program across the city as we have funding availability and as we really work to make sure we're providing good information to folks. You can go to the next slide here. Downtown Seattle especially is so challenging with some of the grades, and we recognize that that's a really hard, the hills are steep, that makes streets steep. It's really hard to get around around the downtown area where we have so many cultural institutions and so much activity going on. So we've been working to develop an age-friendly walking loop that also connects to all of our transit infrastructure. So for us, making that walking loop age-friendly means adding benches, repairing sidewalks, making sure that our tree pits are level so that they're not sort of a trip hazard, adding some pedestrian lighting, different ways to make it safe and accessible to get around. We continue to add to this and make investments that make this this loop sort of an age-friendly opportunity and connect to all the great transit resources that connect you to the whole of the region. I can go on to the next slide. We also recognize that making it, we need to make it easier to cross the street. So we've now got over 300 pedestrian first crosswalks. So places where the walk signal comes on before the car traffic gets a green light, so that people walking and rolling can enter the street before people start to drive. We've seen that reduce crashes between vehicles and pedestrians substantially, and it's a really important part of our toolbox. We've also retimed our traffic signals. Over 500 intersections now have more time to cross the street with some slower walking speeds. Close to 500 intersections have automatic walk signals. You don't have to press the button at the signal to get the walk signal to come on. We'll still have buttons at those signals because they also provide what are known as accessible pedestrian signals. So sometimes you hear the chirping sound. So we'll always have buttons at our signals, but we have close to 500 now that have automatic walk signals. You don't have to press the button to get around. Last year and into the beginning of this year, we made a major effort across the city to reduce speeds on our major roads to 25 miles an hour. So now 90% of our arterial streets, our major streets, are 25 miles an hour, and all of our residential streets are 20 miles an hour. That's really important because it reduces the number of crashes and it reduces the severity of crashes. So we started out with a couple of corridors, a couple of streets, did some before and after studies and found that the high-end speeds came down, the number of crashes came down, and the severity of those came down just by changing the speed limits, while we also make a lot of other investments in terms of making it easier to get around. So we took the learning from those couple of corridors and extended that to now 90% of all of our streets have that speed of 25 miles an hour. That we'll see how people respond to that and continue to evolve how we manage speeds for safety across the city. You can go to the next slide. We continue to do work all across the city thanks to the voter-approved levy to move Seattle. One example that we just completed and celebrated with the community is the Green Lake and Wallingford paving and multimodal project. So this repaved a number of streets around Green Lake and a little bit south. It also had 485 of those new accessible ADA compliant curb ramps. We repainted 83 crosswalks, a couple of intersections with new signals, and other things like our flashing lights, our rectangular rapid flashing beacons, one of my favorite names for a traffic control device out there. It's called an RRFB. That's where you press the button and it immediately starts flashing to alert drivers that they need to stop at the crosswalk. Because we know that a lot of drivers don't stop at crosswalks unless they have a little bit more reinforcement of that. We also installed some new bus islands. Those are places where we have the bus stop sort of closer to the street to enable easier bus loading. And we had 4 miles of enhanced and 2-way protected bike lanes as part of that project. Really exciting project. That's just one of many that we're building right now, thanks to voters from the levy to move Seattle. You can go on to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit. It's summer. It's beautiful. We haven't had actually rain for quite some time, but snow is always on our mind here at SDOT. Last year we had record-breaking snowfall in the middle of the winter, if you remember, and we really continue our efforts to focus on making sure people know their responsibilities to keep sidewalks and curb ramps clear when it snows in Seattle. So we've done a lot on outreach. We saw much better compliance last year in that record-breaking snow than we had in the winter of 2019. When we had a lot of snow as well. Really important that everybody understands this is their responsibility. And we had some of our inspectors out reinforcing that through education and, if necessary, enforcement of the rules. As a reminder, again, it's sunny, it's not going to snow tomorrow, but the requirement is that people clear their sidewalks within 12 hours of when snowfall ends to a pathway that's 3 feet wide. It's also a place where we know that not everybody has the ability to clear their sidewalk in front of their house or in front of their, well, in front of your business. I think it's a pretty clear responsibility. As folks get older or have physical challenges that might help them, keep them from shoveling their sidewalk, it's an opportunity to reach out to your neighbors and create a plan for how to clear that sidewalk when it does snow. It's so important for the accessibility of everybody to be able to have clear sidewalks even when it snows. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about transit and our partnerships across the region on transit. Last year, Seattle voters approved Proposition 1, which funded again the Seattle Transportation Benefit District to work with Metro on providing more transit service in the city of Seattle, and also helps us at SDOT provide some fair affordability and education programs that really help people of all ages and abilities. So that that Proposition 1 has a sales tax component. It's 0.15% of every purchase in the city of Seattle, so about 15 cents on a $100 purchase. That generates close to $40 million a year that we use to fund metro service, provide frequent and efficient service for all Seattleites, really work to interconnect our transportation system. We're also mitigating some of the challenges, like our West Seattle Bridge closure. We're adding more transit service to mitigate some of that impact. We invest in Orca opportunity, so free transit passes for students and low-income members of the community. And we also do some a senior reduced fare program and some senior education on how to access and get around on the bus system, because we know it can be really challenging to navigate the system. And so we've got some real targeted work with some of our community partners on how to help people access the bus. Go on to the next slide. In alignment with that, we also continue to invest through the levy to move Seattle on our transit corridors, our transit plus multimodal corridors, as we've called them. This map shows where all those corridors are, in addition to the existing rapid ride corridors that are out there. We're making investments across these corridors, we're advancing really important investments in safety and transit frequency, reliability, service that will be on all of these. We're about to start construction on the Madison Rapid Ride G line, which will connect from downtown out into the Madison Valley through Capitol Hill. That is major construction that's starting a little bit later this fall. We've also been under construction on the Del Ridge corridor. in partnership with King County again, and we're continuing to advance work on the Roosevelt Rapid Ride J corridor as well. You can move on to the next. This is all part of the region's investment in transit and the build out of the transit system. In October 2nd, we will have 3 new stations, sound transit stations coming online at the U District, Roosevelt, and Northgate. Metro is working to change bus service to connect to that. That's been in partnership with us as we make some street investments to maintain our streets and really connect people to that important new transit service. Then the next couple of years will continue to be this pace of opening up new sound transit system that unlock regional destinations. 2023 sound transit will reach the east side of the region. 2024 it will extend up to Linwood. Really important investments that we're making. Along with that, a new pedestrian bridge across I-5 that will connect from Northgate to Seattle College, and really connect both sides of the divide at I-5 with a comfortable pedestrian and walking bridge. All right, we can go to the next couple of quick hits before we get to the questions and answers. We've had a scooter share program now for close to a year. We really felt this first year was a test period to see how it works across the city. We've had a couple of different operators with different types of devices, including some scooters with seats. So they look a lot like bicycles, but they don't have pedals. We have some that are stand style. Scooters are not allowed to be ridden on sidewalks unless they are part of a bike path. They must park upright and not block pedestrian access. We've added a lot of parking spaces. This is showing one near Alki. In preparation for this, we've also got free and reduced fare programs for people with low income. And then we've tried to test out some technology solutions that can help with the parking. One thing that we've seen still in this pilot period is that many people are parking them incorrectly. There is enforcement that goes back to those riders, but we also see some that fall over in the wind or get knocked over. And so really want to find ways to continue to make this both a safe part of the transportation system, and pedestrian safety is equally important to rider safety, and also make sure that we're not having the negative impacts that could be. Those scooters are limited to 15 miles an hour. There's some other restrictions on where and how they can be ridden, and look forward to continue to make this part of a safe and accessible transportation system. You can go on next as well. Lenny did a great job talking about the resurgence of the Delta variant of COVID-19, and that we're still in the midst of a pandemic. And we recognize it felt like we were emerging. Now it feels like maybe we're losing ground a little bit. We've made changes in how we operate our streets that really try to help people get outside, stay active, but also stay safe. So folks may have seen our network of Stay Healthy streets, which are low volume neighborhood streets that really try to connect people to community destinations. Those might be those libraries that Nancy talked about, community centers, places that people, parks, some of the regional network, getting people to and from transit, connecting to some of those essential services. Those are still open for people who need to access those. They're not, the sign says street closed, but it's still open for everybody that needs to get on that block, but they're no longer intended to be thoroughfares going through communities, and really open for people walking, biking, and rolling. We're now working to make those permanent. We also have worked with the Seattle Parks Department on some of those streets near really popular and crowded parks to see how we can expand the space for people walking and biking along those parks as well. We can go on to the next slide. One other important piece of how we've worked to support our economy through the pandemic is around our Safe Starts permits. And so we've looked at how businesses can use streets and sidewalks and curb spaces while also maintaining pedestrian access and pedestrian safety. You've probably seen outdoor dining in places across the city. That program has been extended to May 2022, and we are looking for ways to get thoughts on improving this program. We've had a survey out a little bit, but you can also send comments to the email address shown here about which is publicspace@seattle.gov. You can go on to the next. And really what we're looking for in that survey and that feedback is how can we continue to make this an important part of a vibrant city, but and deal with any impacts that we're seeing, or how do we manage that as well. All right. Lastly, before we open it up to questions, planning for the future. We've just started the process of developing what we're calling a Seattle transportation plan, aligned with the city's update to the comprehensive plan. This is going to be a multi-year effort to plan for an equitable and resilient transportation system that considers all travel modes. So looking at how we build a system over the next decades that really supports the mission, vision, and values that I talked about, addresses some of our core challenges around climate change, around safety, around building an equitable city, and also maintaining our infrastructure and providing a resilient and reliable infrastructure for people to get around. We're also working on our transportation equity framework, which has been a community-guided effort to develop really clear policies, goals, and programs around building an equitable transportation system, and to undo some of the historic, structural, and institutional racism that has shaped our current transportation system and some of the challenges that people face in accessing it. That's really exciting work that our team has been super hard at work with, along with an external transportation equity work group that has helped guide our activities. Next slide. We, along with the Seattle City Light and Office of Sustainability and the Environment, earlier this year we released our clean transportation, our transportation electrification blueprint, looking at what those investments are that we'll need to make to electrify more of our transportation system, address our climate crisis. Transportation is the largest sector of greenhouse gas emissions in Seattle, and making sure that we're building in that resilience. That's looking at everything from how we move goods around to how we provide more electric vehicle charging stations, and how we even think about land use and how to connect people better with where they need to go so they don't have to drive in the first place. So I want to conclude by just coming back to our vision again of, you can go to the next slide, our vision of thriving, equitable community powered by dependable transportation. All right, with that, I imagine that my presentation has generated a few questions. So I will turn it back to Lenny and the great moderators that have been hard at work to get into those.
Very good. Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate you coming back and giving us an update. And yes, there are quite a few questions there. Before we get to those, I want to, this is a coffee hour, right? We only have 10 minutes left. If we can't stay over, please keep the questions coming. We'll capture everything. And once this is uploaded to YouTube, like and subscribe. Go ahead and navigate there. We'll get those questions answered there. We'll pass them along to Sam and his team. One thing that you mentioned, Sam, was the Sound Transit partnership and a few new stations opening. I just got an email while we were on the air from Donna Smith from Sound Transit. She is the manager of accessible services there. She just let us know that on September 1st, 1 to 4, there is going to be an opportunity for people with disabilities to explore these stations before they open so that they could navigate them better once it all goes live. This is, you have to sign up for this event. So if you could actually email Donna, and it's donnasmith@soundtransit.org, DONNA.SMITH soundtransit.org, and just let her know that you want to check it out, and just thought I'd pass this along. One other thing I want to do before we go to the online questions is to welcome one of our, looks like we just have one person on the phone today, and I want to give them an opportunity to ask their question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I don't have any question, but I do have a comment that I have a couple of friends in Kent, and one of them is losing his eyesight, and it may be necessary for him to quit driving like in a couple, 2 or 3 years. I also like the idea of the ORCA program, the pilot program. It was that was started about a couple of years ago. I really appreciate that for low-income people. I mentioned I mentioned a couple in Kent because they may need materials on how to get around on buses as well. She already doesn't drive, and he, like I said, he may have to quit driving in a few years, 2, 3, 4 years. I'll just say he's in his 90s, and again, the large print material would be really helpful. I'm probably sounding awkward, but you know what I mean, don't you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
caller. And I just wanted to mention, Sam, I'm sorry for interrupting, but basically, since it's Kent, right? We mentioned at the top of the program, community living connections, right? So that's a number to call with any aging or disability concerns that you or your friend might have. So please keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your comment, Sam. Do you have anything to add? All right. Cool. Well, at this stage, I'm gonna invite to the stage one of our moderators, Andrea Yip, who is the planning manager here at the Aging Disability Services and Human Services Department. Andrea, welcome to the program. What questions do we have here for Sam?
Well, hi, Sam. We have a lot of interest in the West Green Lake Way, and callers have commented that this has caused great stress for community as there's less parking for people of all ages, especially those with mobility issues. So the questions are about when this street is going to open.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for those that aren't aware of this, last year, we closed a section of road called West Green Lake Way North, which is on the southwest part of Green Lake. And that was because we were seeing a lot of crowding in and around Green Lake, and we've worked with Seattle Parks and Recreation around some of our really popular destination parks to expand the areas that are open for people to sort of decrowd some of the parks. It's not too dissimilar to where we were, what we've done along Lake Washington Boulevard, some other places around the city. We are working to reopen that piece of road at the same time as we make upgrades to the bike lanes that are there along that stretch of road that really make this age-friendly transportation system that I've been talking about, make sure that we're making those bike lanes, which were sort of paint on the edge of the road, into some more age-friendly, all ages and abilities bike lanes. We recognize that this is a street that pre-pandemic was seeing about 10,000, 11,000 vehicles per day, and that folks in the surrounding communities are having to take some alternative routes right now. We're working to get that street open at the same time as we're making those additional investments to keep everybody safe.
Thanks, Sam. There's also some questions here around hazards, and there's a appreciation for attempts to making walking safer. This is on 105th Street, heading north on 8th Avenue, so that's a thank you. But then we also have some concerns about blockage, like tents on sidewalks, and so if you could just address that.
Sure. Yeah. So on the first one, we make a lot of effort to try to address trip hazards, and we do that with what we call beveling, where we shave down a little bit of the sidewalk, or shimming, putting some little asphalt patches to try to level those out. We've been trying to do that in a more proactive way. We get a lot of sidewalk upheavals with tree roots and things like that, and so try to go around the city. You can also report those through the Find It, Fix It system, so that we know where those are. But we try to get on sort of a rotating basis around the city to do that work. And we've been sort of accelerating how much we invest and how much we are able to do there. In terms of sidewalks blocked with tents and some of our challenges with our neighbors living unhoused, reporting those locations to the customer service bureau to try to help us identify where those are. We also are working on we have folks out around the city trying to identify those places where we have obstructions or challenges for people getting around, so that we can do the outreach necessary to those folks and try to get people into services or into to sort of move to remove the obstruction, and if not, we can work to relocate and remove that those obstructions. The customer service bureau is available 206-684-2489 as a place to call in those locations as well. We recognize that there are impacts on people's mobility from some of those obstructions on the sidewalk. We also recognize that we have unhoused neighbors that we're trying to get help and services as well.
Thanks, Sam. You probably are expecting this, but West Seattle Bridge reopening, comments?
Yep. So, I live in West Seattle. I'm impacted daily by the impacts of that closure. We're working to reopen the bridge to traffic by mid 2022. We remain on target for that, and are working each and every day to get that bridge back open to traffic. At the same time, we're also working on mitigations for that impact, small scale traffic improvements. We've got a lot of work going on around the city, around the West Seattle and the whole Duwamish Valley. Also, we've been making sort of neighborhood traffic calming improvements called home zones to try to help those communities that have been most impacted by the diversion of traffic around the closure. We have a weekly email update, and so if folks are interested in getting updates regularly on the bridge and the progress that we continue to make, you can find that information on our website as well.
Thanks, Sam. And I think you mentioned some things, but we did have a question in here about what is SDOT doing to make transportation safer and easier for those that do drive?
Absolutely. So, when we look at transportation safety, it is for everybody. And a lot of those things that I talked about in terms of making it safer for people walking also apply for people driving. So reducing the speed limit reduces the number of crashes that are out there. Some of the work that we do on signals, we are replacing traffic signal heads with ones that are larger and a little bit easier to see. Some of the changes in how we're operating the streets from a traffic signal perspective also are intended to reduce the number of collisions that people who are driving are in and make it safer. So those investments are really looking at overall community safety.
Yeah, and just to follow up, there was a question about traffic circles to reduce speeds, which I'm assuming is part of that strategy. So this caller is asking, when I go from Roosevelt northeast to Fifth Avenue, I encounter a few, and they're wondering, is that still being done?
We still do build a few traffic circles. Some of our we do, and those are still part of our toolbox. We don't build that many right now. We have been taking this approach I mentioned a little bit about talking about West Seattle, called the home zone, where we're looking not just at one intersection, but looking at a whole neighborhood and trying to build out sort of traffic calming at a community scale. That often involves things like speed humps, maybe new stop signs, or other ways to sort of keep people safe within a community and to discourage people from cutting through that community rapidly. So traffic circles can be part of that approach as well.
And there is a question here about autonomous vehicles and could they ever work in Seattle?
Autonomous vehicles might be its own coffee hour that we could set up down the line. I've got a lot of thoughts and feelings about this. I feel like we need to continue to build a transportation system that works safely for all of us today, but also thinking about how that potentially plays into the future. I have very strong concerns that we would think that autonomous vehicles could replace some of the need for us to build a safe transportation system for today. I think it will take, even if fully autonomous vehicles were available tomorrow, it would take us a really long time to transition to a fully autonomous transportation system. I just got rid of earlier this year my 2007 car and upgraded. But if you think about how long it will take for the vehicle fleet to turn over overall, and so far, even those companies that are touting their autonomous vehicle capabilities have some real safety concerns when it comes to a complicated urban environment. So there's some great possibilities and potential, but I think we will still have to build and make investments in a safe transportation system for everybody.
Sounds good. I will look forward to that coffee hour. Here we have a question about the city sidewalk survey that interns completed in 2017, and how is SDOT using that?
Yeah, that's a very detailed technical question, which is great. So we did do a citywide sidewalk survey a few years back. That feeds into that approach that I talked about, that sort of proactive approach to trying to get out to locations and make those small scale investments. We also recognize that there's a lot of places in the city that don't have sidewalks at all. So as we look to maintain the infrastructure that we have, we also work on building out safe and accessible sidewalks throughout the city in those places that don't have them, which have traditionally, north end, south end communities have often been without sidewalks, and that makes it really challenging to have a safe and accessible place to walk. It's also very costly to build out sidewalks because we have to build drainage and things like that. So we continue to work on both full sidewalks and also what we call low-cost sidewalks that really try to extend that pedestrian network and make it safe for everybody.
Well, Sam, that looks like you've covered them all. Back to you, Lenny and Sam.
Thank you, Andrea. I appreciate you cutting through those questions real quick. There was quite a few coming through there. I could just see them popping in, and some of them were related. And glad to hear, Sam, that you want to do another coffee hour. We'll have to take you up on it, I believe. We're experimenting with streaming on Facebook as well, and there's been quite a few. None of them are really questions, but a lot of them. There's a lot of comments that are coming through, and I think in the interest of time, I will just direct your attention to Age Friendly Seattle's Facebook page to kind of see what folks are saying there. But a lot of that is comments on Green Lake, saying that we need more east-west connections and transit options, not street closures, and comments about bikes and scooters. There's quite a few things going on there that we won't probably get to today, but it sounds like people are interested in what SDOT is doing and are noticing sort of like what is happening with the city streets. So I will go ahead and send you that link to take a look, and maybe it's just feedback, and that's the whole thing about this, right? Social and civic participation. It's not always about answering questions. It's just hearing what our community elders think about what we do here at the city. And so I thank you for being here, and thank you, Andrea, for moderating, and everybody else on today's crew. I will go ahead and say goodbye to Sam now. We'll hopefully get to do this in person, maybe on a scooter. How about that? That could be a cool event to do. So have a good one, Sam. And is there any closing words?
Lenny. Well, I would just say I'm always happy to come back. It's great. Maybe we'll make it an annual tradition. Up on the screen now is our website, www.seattle.gov/transportation, which has a lot of information and ways to give us feedback about how we're doing. And we look forward to continuing to engage. I agree, hopefully in person, and hearing about what we can do better, what people like about what we're doing. And my thanks to go out to you, the whole team that puts these on, and also my whole team at SDOT that is working tirelessly every day to make the city safe and accessible.
Absolutely, and we appreciate your partnership in making Seattle more age-friendly. We know it's a continuous kind of thing, but we'll keep working at it. Thank you, Sam. We'll see you in a little bit here. And thank you, Nancy. It doesn't look like there is any questions, any more questions or comments for you, but we appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next time. So if we go to the next slide at this point, Gita, if you could save the date for the next coffee hour, still virtual for now, so you'll have to again make your own coffee and bring your own donuts. But we will be welcoming another department director, this time from the Department of Neighborhoods, and also a return appearance by Andres Mantilla, who will give us an update on what Department of Neighborhoods is doing to help us become more age-friendly here at the City of Seattle. You'll again join by the same link, bit.ly/age-friendly live, same phone access options. And a reminder that Community Living Connections, the caller was talking about somebody in Kent, and I said, we gave a number at the beginning of the program. Well, let me repeat that number. It's 1-844-348-5464, and the website is communitylivingconnections.org. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and participation. And, we hope that you will join us again, and please stay safe out there, and see you next time. До свидания.